Hello and welcome back to the channel. Well, I wanted to touch on the story of the Hebrew Israelites who are being deported from Israel. I wanted to touch on that story again because a number of things kind of stuck out to me a bit, okay? One thing I'm going to be talking about is the fact that there are always these references to someone being a vegan. Almost like that's an international law now. If you don't eat meat or you consider yourself a vegan, that's some crime of some sort, okay? That's one thing I wanted to talk about. The other thing is how some of the articles are actually saying that 46 families are being asked to leave the country in 60 days. So 46 families or 46 individuals is two different things. So how many exactly it is unclear based on all of the various reports. So if you're saying 45 individuals, that's one thing. 45 individuals, that's one thing. But 46 families is what some of the articles are stating. So that could mean husband, wife, children. So that number can actually go into the hundreds if you are talking about 46 families versus 45 individuals. Either way it goes, it is a very tragic thing because, and let me tell you why I say it's tragic, okay? Because there's a number of different opinions out there. I think it's tragic because when something is your homeland and you're being told to leave your homeland, you say to yourself, wow, this is the land of my ancestors and I'm being kicked out?
Dozens of members of a polygamous, vegan sect in Israel have received deportation orders from the government, the group's spokesman said Monday, despite much of the community having received permanent residency under arrangements with Israel. The community, which numbers around 3,000 people, is made up of Black Americans whose leaders moved to Israel in the 1960s and believe they are descendants of an ancient Israelite tribe. Most live in the southern desert town of Dimona. Prince Emmanuel Ben Yehuda, spokesman for the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, said that the Interior Ministry had given notice to at least 46 families that they must leave the country within 60 days, calling it a shock to the system. The African Hebrew Israelites began arriving in Israel in 1969, following Ben Carter, a Chicago steelworker who renamed himself Ben Ami Ben Israel and claimed to be God's representative on earth. But Israel was not sure what to make of the newcomers, who arrived on tourist visas, adopted Hebrew names, and a West African style of dress. The government was unsure whether they qualified for citizenship under the country's law of return, which is granted to almost any Jew who requests it. The Interior Ministry granted many members of the community temporary residency in 1992 and permanent residency status in 2003. Many members study in Israeli schools and serve in the military. For quite some time, we've had a number of members of the community with different levels of immigration status. Some of us have full citizenship, some taken permanent residency, some have temporary residency, and some have no status whatsoever, said Ben Yehuda. He said the community has been working for years with Israeli authorities to sort out the legal status of those without permanent residency. The Population and Immigration Authority said in a statement that in 2003, 1,200 African Hebrew Israelites were found eligible for residency, and that in the years afterward the office received other requests from people who were not members of the community. All those who were not included in the list of community members and didn't meet the criteria received a negative reply and in effect are residing illegally in Israel for a long period and must leave according to the law, the authority said in a statement. It added that those who had received deportation letters were entitled to appeal. Ben Yehuda said the community would appeal the decision. We're here because we chose to be here to build this country and give our energy to the improvement and the betterment of this nation. So it's quite a bit disheartening in that respect, he said.
That's what I mean by tragic, okay? Now the other side of that are those who are talking about biblical prophecy and what is said or slated to happen to the land of Israel in the last days. Now, everyone, even in Christianity, has been talking about biblical prophecy concerning the land of Israel in the last days. So this is nothing new. this is something that many people have spoken about over the years, right? And so when you look at biblical prophecy and what it says, if you believe in the Bible, if you believe in biblical prophecy, then you know what is said to happen in the last days, especially in regards to the land of Israel. And so some people are saying, well, it's a blessing in disguise that they are being put out for that reason. Okay. And so when you look at it from that point of view, it would be a blessing in disguise to have to be sent out of there or deported out of there, right? Again, that's if you believe in biblical prophecy. Some people could take it or leave it, right? Some could take it or leave it. Okay, so back to the veganism thing. I notice how whenever something like this is happening, there's a reference to someone being a vegan. Like many years ago, when that one Hebrew Israelite family was broken up, and the parents and the children and all of that, there was talk about them being vegans, as if there was some type of international crime. Like, if you don't eat meat, then you are not an average citizen, or you are not a righteous or a good person, you're a criminal. It almost criminalizes veganism when you have people who make it seem like it's some type of abuse. Okay, I remember, I'm not going to really get into it, but people like to try to point that out as if to say that there is abuse involved, when I see all around the world very healthy vegans. Okay, we're not vegans, but we definitely understand why some are, and why there are very strict choices on the kinds of meat you eat. Okay, we get that 100%. Now, again, like I said, we are not vegans, but I do believe that a person has a choice on whether or not they want to eat meat, especially if it's something that they didn't raise themselves. If you have to go to the store and get it, who knows what's in that meat? And to try to make it a crime or sound like a crime, because again, that was used against that one family who was broken up. Veganism, that was one thing that was kind of like tagged on them as if it was a part of a crime. And so I thought it was very interesting that that was pointed out, that they are a part of a polygamous vegan sect. I'm like, what? Okay, so even with polygamy, you have Mormons who practice that, and it's not demonized as badly as it is if someone else practices it, right? Or if black people practice that. You have people in Africa who've been doing this for thousands of years as per their custom, but it's never been treated like a crime. But you have a criminal nation who treats something like that as a crime. And I say to myself, you can't make this stuff up, because it's just so tripped out how people think, right? It's tripped out how they think. Now, I don't advocate for anything Hebrew Israelite. Anyone who's been following us for years knows that, and they know why, because I do see it as a religious break off from the culture. Okay? The culture and being a Hebrew Israelite are two different things. Who you are of the flesh is something totally different. I believe that you can know who your ancestors are, but you don't have to act like religious, I'm going to say fanatics, because there are different beliefs. Some people have a more rounded belief, and you have others who have a belief system that is just kind of off the chain and a little bit whacked out, right? This is why we're working on Whited Out Part 8, Gone with the Winds of Doctrine, because so many doctrines are swirling out here to where Hebrew Israelite is almost like its own separate religion, or sounding like its own separate religion. Now, I'm not talking about the people's culture as far as who their ancient ancestors are. We know who our ancient ancestors are. We totally understand and get that. But when you have all of this weirdness just wrapped up into something that the ancient people never even called themselves, first of all, we even pointed that out, that term Hebrew was made by the same people who made and created the term Jew. That was their term. That is what they called themselves first. And now it is being borrowed by people who get angry at you if you say anything about it. When no one in ancient history ever called themselves Hebrew Israelite, because that is a modern terminology made by a modern Jewish people. It is what it is. Of course, over the years I've stated that, and people just fight against that yet and still. That's fine and dandy. I can care less what other people call themselves, but don't try to make it seem like I or my family deny our culture because we don't want to be called something like that. We don't agree with a lot of those teachings as well. Okay? But I just wanted to point out something else on this particular case of what's going on with the people that are being deported out of Israel. It's very tripped out. Like I said, that is our ancient land, and the fact that they are being asked to leave is tripped out. But on the other side of that, is it something being done that could possibly save some of their lives based on what biblical prophecy says? Any of you who study biblical prophecy, let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you see this as a good thing with these people being asked to leave? Or do you think it's bold? Okay. Also, the whole thing about veganism. Why is that brought up as a part of someone's belief? Like that's synonymous with cult-like thinking because you don't want to eat meat that's been pumped with all kinds of chemicals. Now that's very weird to me. I'm sorry. That is strange. But again, that's part of the deception of the world that we live in. You got Chinese chicken. You got chickens coming from China that they show folk on camera injecting stuff into it. And they tell you, oh, it's just this, it's just that. How do we know what the heck that is that's being juiced into the chicken? You see? But folk can't say nothing about it. You're not allowed to say something about it because you're essentially informing the people that it might not be a good idea to eat all of these different things that are being told to you that is food. What if it is pumped with something? So then you can understand why a person would choose to be vegan unless they choose to just raise their own livestock and eat from that. But if they choose to be vegan, why is that made to look like it's a bad thing? Tell me what your thoughts are in the comment section. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, share and like this video. And with that, I'm out. Be sure to ring the bell to be notified of new uploads on this channel, and also comment, share, like, and subscribe.